From the shocking disappearance of a promising young student to the unbelievable case of an alien invasion in Africa, here are 10 of the most bizarre, unsolved mysteries still active. Number 10. The CIRCLEVILLE letters. In 1976, someone initiated a campaign of terror that would haunt the entire town of CIRCLEVILLE. The event came to be known as the CIRCLEVILLE letters, and it remains unsolved to this very day. It all started with the letters. Someone began sending letters to the residents of the town that contained threats of violence. The letters also contained personal information that only the recipient of the letters could possibly have been aware of. The letters sometimes contained lewd artwork. None of them had a return address. Some of them were even delivered from very far away. The one thing all the letters had in common was that they were written in the same style. They were written in block letters clearly meant to hide the author's real handwriting. There was one woman who was particularly singled out more than the other residents. Her name was Mary Gillespie, and she was a school bus driver. She received quite a few letters, with one of them even alleging that she was having an affair with the superintendent at the local school. Then a letter ended up being sent to her husband with threats saying his wife needed to end the affair or he would die. Mary was adamant that she was not having an affair. After 2 weeks, more letters arrived threatening to broadcast Mary's alleged affair to the entire town. Then Mary's husband received a phone call. He was so angered by whatever the caller said that he left the house with his pistol. He ended up crashing into a tree and dying. When police investigated, they found that Ron had fired his pistol once sometime before the crash, but they never found out why. They also never found out who had been writing the CIRCLEVILLE letters. Number 9. Susie Lamplugh. 25-year-old Susie Lamplugh got a job in London in 1986 as a real estate agent. The agency put her at a desk in the window, saying that the most attractive woman also got put on display to lure male customers into the shop. On July 28th, Susie went out for a lunch appointment with someone named Mr. Kipper. She never returned to work, and 35 years later, she has yet to be found. It turned into one of Britain's largest missing persons investigations. To this day, nobody has any idea what happened to Susie. But this is one of those weird missing persons cases where investigators never even received a clue. The case got a lot of attention from the media, seeing as Susie was the idealistic middle-class woman who fell victim to a mysterious crime in broad daylight. But regardless of the media frenzy, there was no headway made by the police. 5 years after the incident, not a single trace of Susie had been found. Her body was never discovered, police could never trace her whereabouts after leaving her office, and in 1993, Susie was presumed murdered and legally declared dead. Number 8. The OAKVILLE blobs. In August of 1994, residents in Oakville got the surprise of a lifetime when translucent blobs, each of them about the size of a grain of rice, began raining from the sky. The first incident occurred at someone's home, where the blobs rained down during the night and allegedly made the owners of the house develop symptoms like the flu. Over the next 3 weeks, 5 additional reports came in from locals discovering gelatinous blobs raining from the sky around their home before quickly falling ill after coming into contact with them. Then it stopped. As quickly as the blobs came, they were gone. A microbiologist from Washington State Department of Health went to investigate. He discovered that the blobs contained 2 distinct species of bacteria, though the bacteria should not have been harmful to humans. To this day, nobody has any idea what the blobs were or why they fell from the sky. There have also been claims that the microbiologist sent by the government was actually a fraud simply there to collect evidence and debunk any theories. Speaking of theories, there are a lot of them. Some claim the blobs were the result of military weapons testing. Some say they were pieces of jellyfish that got splashed into the stratosphere during a bomb test in the Pacific Ocean. Other theories say the blobs never even fell from the sky, but instead appeared on the ground overnight. In any case, nothing like this has ever happened again. Number 7. The SETAGAYA family murder. The SETAGAYA family murder is one of the grisliest cold cases in Japanese history. In 2020, the cold case turned 20 years old. But what happened back in December of 2000? Well, the Miyazaki family was murdered. But there was some stuff that happened before the murders. The Miyazaki family moved to an up-and-coming neighborhood in 1991. But the Tokyo government had plans for the area, and so by the year 2000, they had purchased most of the houses and kicked most of the people out. In 2000, there were only 4 houses still standing. The Miyazaki family occupied one of those houses and were planning on leaving soon. On the night of December 30th, somebody entered the house through a window on the second-floor balcony. This person strangled the youngest Miyazaki to death. Next was the father, who was stabbed through his thighs and buttocks, his arms and chest, and his face. The final victims were the mother and daughter, who had been sleeping together in the attic. The killer climbed up the foldable ladder, went into the attic, and stabbed both girls to death. The killer then went into their kitchen and ate ice cream that they found in their freezer right out of the bucket. They even had a band-aid and used it to patch a wound on their hand. Most shocking of all is that the killer sat down and browsed the web for a bit before leaving. In the end, nobody could figure out who killed the Miyazaki family or why. To this very day, the killer is likely walking free throughout the streets of Japan. Number 6. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse. The Flannan Isles is a small group of 7 islets off the coast of Scotland. In December of 1900, the ship Hesperus set sail for the Isle of Eilean Mor. The duty of the ship was to relieve the lighthouse keeper as part of the normal rotation. Bad weather had delayed the journey by several days, but it wasn't a big deal. They finally got to the island, but were surprised that nobody was there at the dock waiting for them. Even stranger was when they explored the island and found all 3 of the lighthouse keepers had vanished. But they had nowhere to go. This is why it's so insane that they vanished. It would make sense if one of them fell off the cliffs and drowned, but it didn't make sense that all 3 of them disappeared. Even stranger is that when the replacement lighthouse keepers investigated, they discovered that the kitchen table still had plates of meat and potatoes ready to be eaten. The clocks had stopped, a chair was overturned, 2 of the coats were gone, and the gate door was shut. This was obviously perplexing. The clues would suggest that the 3 men had stopped to eat, something had created a panic, 2 of the men ran outside, and a 3rd was left inside, presumably to guard the lighthouse as were the rules. The lighthouse was never allowed to be empty. In the end, we simply don't know what happened to the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers. They just vanished. Number 5. LARS MITTANK. In July of 2014, LARS MITTANK vanished in a field just outside the international airport in Varna, Bulgaria. LARS was from Berlin. He went to join his friends on holiday in Bulgaria before he went missing. One of the strangest aspects of the case is that an airport security video captured his last known sighting and was uploaded to the internet, earning LARS the title of the most famous missing person on YouTube. But here's where the truly strange details of his vanishing come into play. He was literally in the airport and about to go home when he seemingly changed his mind. He was heard saying, "I don't want to die here," right before he dropped his belongings, ran out of the airport, climbed over a fence, disappeared into the forest, and then was never seen again. LARS has now been missing for 7 years. His family has begged for information from the public and have pleaded with authorities to find their son, but LARS is still missing. Number 4. The Zimbabwe Alien Invasion. In 1994, a school in the small town of Rua in Zimbabwe experienced an alien invasion. 62 students reported seeing an unidentified flying object before a strange being communicated with them. These children were between the ages of 8 and 12. They were visited by the strange being during the morning break. They were playing in the schoolyard, and a silver craft came out of nowhere, dropped down into the bush behind the school, and a creature came out of the alien craft and wandered over to where the children were watching. The creature was apparently dressed all in black and had big eyes like rugby balls. According to the kids, the alien warned them that they needed to take care of the planet. That was the message. It wasn't about anything political and not about something going on out in the universe. The alien literally just said that the children needed to take better care of the planet. Scared, most of them ran screaming back to their teachers. By the time the teachers took any kind of interest, the alien was gone. After the incident, the children were asked to draw pictures of what they had seen independently. Each child drew a picture by themselves with no suggestions from friends. Shockingly, they all drew very similar pictures. Harvard professor of psychiatry John E. Mack visited the school in 1994 and filmed his interviews with the kids. It became clear at that point that the children were telling the truth. They had indeed been visited by an alien. It's important to note that after the Harvard professor began investigating this incident, he was put under extreme scrutiny by the school, ignored by his colleagues, and essentially discredited as a hack. Number 3. The SODDER children. The SODDER children went missing on Christmas Eve in 1945, and nobody knows where they went. For nearly 40 years, a billboard stood beside Route 16 near Fayetteville in West Virginia with the faces of the 5 children who had gone missing on it, demanding justice and answers. But what exactly happened to these children? The night before Christmas, George and Jenny Sodder and 9 of their 10 children went to bed. One of their oldest sons was currently away in the Army. Just after midnight, a fire broke out and George and Jenny escaped with 4 of their kids. The other 5 were never seen from again. George had tried to save them. He broke a window and tried to get back in the house, but it just wasn't possible. The house was already burning and it was filled with smoke. Even stranger is that the phone seemed to not be working. Everyone nearby was trying to phone the fire department, but all the lines were dead. Even though the fire department was only a bit more than 2 miles, 3.2 kilometers away, they didn't receive the 911 call for around 7 hours. By then, the house was ash. But the real mystery came when the remains of the 5 children weren't found. Not a single bone, piece of hair, or tooth was ever discovered in the wreckage of the house. Popular theories are that the children actually lived and were abducted by someone who never wanted them to be found. but nobody knows who would have done that or why. Number 2. Lauren SPIERER. Lauren SPIERER was an Indiana University student who went missing in June of 2011 and has been declared one of the most mysterious unsolved disappearances in history. She was 20 years old and spent the early hours of the morning partying at a downtown bar. The last time she was seen, Lauren was walking near an off-campus apartment just as the sun was coming up. She was last witnessed walking barefoot at 4:30 a.m. at the intersection of 11th Street and College Avenue. Lauren SPIERER has not been seen since that fateful morning. Police scoured the area. They searched high and low. Nobody has found a trace of her, and it's believed that Lauren is already dead. One of the prevailing theories is that based on Laurel's level of intoxication at the time, she'd been drugged by somebody at the bar who had plotted to kidnap her. If this really was the case, the kidnapper has certainly gotten away with it. It's been 10 years, and there's still no sign of Lauren. Number 1. Road trip gone wrong. The Trump family went on a road trip completely technology-free. They wanted to take a break from tech, something more and more people are doing these days. But their road trip ended with a police investigation and 2 of the family members stuck in psychiatric care. Let's start at the beginning. The Trump family were completely ordinary people living in a nice property on the outskirts of Melbourne. Mark and Jacoba went on an impromptu road trip on August 29th, packing their 3 kids in the car and leaving. They left their passports at home, their mobile phones, and even their credit cards. It was an off-the-grid road trip. It later turned out that they were actually running from a danger that may have been imaginary. The Trump's son Mitchell was the first to leave. He abandoned the family on the second day. Later on that same day, the 2 daughters, Rihanna and Ella, also ran away. They stole a car and fled to a nearby town where they reported their parents missing. Rihanna and Ella got separated, with Ella going home where she ran into the police. Mitchell arrived home the next morning. Rihanna was found the next day in a psychotic state, rambling that she didn't know her name. She was taken to the hospital and is still in psychiatric care. Jacoba Trump was found shortly after, also psychotic, and she was sent to join her daughter in the psychiatric ward. It would be 6 days after the road trip started that Mark was found. He was questioned, but the police couldn't do anything to him because he had committed no crimes and he was left alone. But it was still a very strange road trip, with no reason ever being given for why the 2 females went abruptly insane. Thanks for watching. Do you have any theories about these mysterious cases? If so, sound off in the comments down below, and be sure to hit the subscribe button for more videos like these right here on American Eye.